you have to have a career path as an entrepreneur. You can't, if you don't have a career path as an entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur, if that makes any sense, because you've still got to keep on learning, looking for the opportunities. And it's only by progressing yourself, developing yourself, learning more yourself, that you then see those opportunities.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing, and you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I trust also that you enjoyed our most recent interviews with Duncan Smith of ADC Associates and with Leanne Hughes of First Time Facilitator. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Deb Farnworth-Wood. She's a serial entrepreneur and she's the founder of the franchise Australian Skin Clinics. Deb's career has been punctuated by firsts. She was the first non-doctor to become a partner in a UK medical practice, and her group were the first non-pharmacist to own a UK pharmacy. She also opened England's first drive-through pharmacy. It's a testament to her incredible vision and passion for the aesthetics industry that she continues to push the boundaries of that business to this day. Now, her mission is to share her wealth of business expertise and experience, and she says no holds barred, both the good and the bad, with as many entrepreneurs and business owners as possible. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of that business knowledge and expertise with you today. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where you'll find a host of free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. You can access the Transformational Marketing Hub by visiting innovabiz.co/VIP. Go check it out. It's free to join, and if you're already a member, just log in to get your resources. In our discussion today, Deb talked to me about the importance of choosing the right people to work with. She told me about building a great business culture in a new business and also maintaining that culture in an existing business. And she described how her constant thirst for knowledge and for learning lead her to a multitude of new opportunities. Without further ado, then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Deb Farnworth-Wood. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia, Deb Farnworth-Wood. She's the founder of Australian Skin Clinics franchise, and she's a serial entrepreneur that's done a lot in her lifetime that we'll hear about in today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, Deb. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on board.
Victor Ahipini, who was my guest on episode 147 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we interview you, Deb. So big hello to Victor.
Yeah, hello, Victor, and thank you for putting me forward.
Now, today, Deb, your mission is to share your business experience and expertise, no holds barred, you say, so both the good and the bad, and we all know that there's good and bad in business, with business owners and entrepreneurs across the world. So you share your wealth of experience, you're a prolific publisher of content on your blog, and you're a vibrant speaker. So I'm really looking forward to delving into all things business and particularly marketing with you today. But before we talk about all those things, business and marketing and sharing your expertise, give us a bit of a background snapshot of how you got to where you are today and what were some of the key moments in that journey.
Well, I think, first of all, first thing to say is I come from a really normal, average background. I'm born to working class parents. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. But I just always had this sort of internal desire to be the best that I can be at whatever it is I do. And I think probably unwittingly that has led me down the path of becoming an entrepreneur, because there comes a point where you can see you've got more talents than are utilised in, for example, an employed role, that you have more skills you want to acquire and maybe don't get the opportunity to do when you're working for an employer. And so I think all of those elements coupled together led me to believe that one day I would end up working for myself. And in fact, I did. And so in terms of how I got to where I am today, really, I've worked in a number of varying different businesses in different capacities. I've been in hospitality, I've been in retail, a lot of time in health, and covered a lot of different grounds in health. So primary care mainly, but also pharmacy. Done work with the health service in the UK on improving things like waiting list times and so on and so forth in hospitals and secondary care. And then finally moving to Australia in theory to retire, but ending up building a new empire here.
Yeah, once you get bitten by the bug, it's hard to retire, isn't it?
I honestly don't know what to do with myself. I've tried really hard. So I don't like not doing anything. And then I think there's only so many lunches and coffees and catch-ups you can have with friends. I tried yoga and swimming and all the sporty things that people do on the Gold Coast, but the thing that makes me tick is the challenge of business. And I love to see people succeed. I love helping people grow their business and grow their own skill set. I love to see staff move on and do better. And so I think all of those things mean I don't think I can ever truly retire.
Mm. Now, you've started quite a number of businesses and you've sold businesses, and like you said, you've moved to Australia and kind of went halfway around the world and started all over again, essentially. So what are some of the lessons you've learned there? I know this is a pretty big question. What are some of the lessons you've learned, and what are some of the traps that people fall into when they start a business and they look to grow and establish it?
I think some of the hard lessons that I've learned are very much around the choice of people that you work with. So I haven't always got that right, and at various times throughout the years, that's either hindered me or halted me. But equally, some amazing groups that have catapulted me as well. But that choice of people that you work with is very important. I think I saw very early on in the game that it's better to work with people than against people. So I've always had very respectful relationships with suppliers. I don't believe in holding suppliers to ransom or screwing them down to the best possible price at a cost of other support that you may need, such as training or even just cooperation when you've forgotten to place an order and you need something urgently. If you have destructive relationships with your suppliers, then that will never work well for you. Other lessons are really around marketing. So marketing is not something that I've ever studied. So I'm sort of a self-learned marketeer along the way. Marketing is so important that you get that right. And then I think particularly when you start out, you've got to really like the product or service that you offer, because if you don't like it, you're going to get bored of it very quickly. But most importantly, it's got to be a product or service that everybody else is going to like and want too, because you can't build a business on what you like. It's got to be what's commercially viable to sell to other people.
Yeah, well, there's some really good fundamental common sense tips there, but of course, as we all know, common sense isn't all that common.
Yes.
So, yeah, so you've mentioned that you built businesses in the health and pharmacy industry and then in the cosmetics industry. So why cosmetics and why skincare?
Well, that actually was a combination, I suppose, of a fortuitous event. But in the UK, we had a very large medical centre. I was actually in partnership with 8 GPs for nearly 18 years. And in that time, we built a huge multidisciplinary centre. We had everything from pharmacy, dental, podiatrists, counsellors, social workers, nurse practitioners, podiatrists. I don't know if I said that. So we had a huge raft of different treatments available in this very large centre. And I had run out of things to put in there that were sort of so directly related to health, and had started to develop an interest in aesthetics. So this would have been about 2002, 2003, when Botox was just becoming a thing, getting quite popular in the UK. And I started to look at that. But my 8 business partners were not that interested in it because they were all doctors. They called it frivolous medicine. and and maybe I was frivolous, I don't know. So I'd started to get interested in that, and I'd actually looked at buying an aesthetic clinic with a view to moving it into the medical centre. So although they weren't interested in it, they kind of let me do anything that was business building anyway. And then we actually had an offer to buy our pharmacy offers, and it was an offer we couldn't refuse. So we decided to sell the pharmacy. And in doing so, my husband said, "Look, I think it's time you slowed down. You've been working very hard for a long time." And I think our kids were 6 and 8 then. So he said, "You need to spend more time with the kids. Let's exit the whole business and move to Australia and retire." And so that was kind of the plan. And I didn't really think I'd do it. I wasn't that interested in moving to Australia. But I came with the kids for 3 weeks. Actually, it wasn't 3 weeks, it was 12 days we came here for. And in those 12 days, I just happened to see the original Australian skin clinic for sale. And I came to have a look because I was interested in aesthetics and Botox and so on. And then the minute I walked through the door, I knew I was going to buy it. And I did a deal the day I saw it. And we moved to Australia within 3 months of that. And so initially, the buying the business was intended to get me a visa in the country, because that's the easiest way to get into Australia is to buy yourself in. And I had this theory that I'd run it for a few years and then sell it, and even not run it myself, but have a manager in there, and then ended up loving it, coming to work every day. And then, as you know, the rest is history, built a franchise.
Yeah. So when you bought it first, well, first of all, pretty interesting holiday. But when you first bought Australian Skin Clinics, was it just the one clinic?
Yes, just one. And it was completely different to what we have now. And again, when you look at sort of lessons in business, the original business that I bought was completely doctor focused. So a lot of the treatments were done by the doctor. We had beauticians and estheticians, and we did other treatments as well, but we did a lot of high and low end. So we did everything from waxing and tinting and what I call soft beauty, right through to more medical. So we did liposuction and we did threadless and things like that. And but the business was actually not replicable. And once I decided that I did want to replicate the business, grow it bigger, become a franchise, I had to weed out the things that were not easy to do that with, or not easy to train. So the original clinic had a huge stock holding of about $250,000, and we were able to get that down to about $50,000 by dropping some of the services. We had services that could only be done by doctors, so and they would come in 1 or 2 days a week to deliver them. So we changed the emphasis for services that we could deliver every day with a staff that was static every day and not so dependent really on so many whims of different staff levels.
So what was it when you saw that business? What was it that convinced you so quickly to buy it? What did you see in it?
I think, oddly enough, one of the things that attracted me to it was the fact that it was a one-stop shop, and it did do so many things. And it was only actually once I'd bought it and had the pleasure of running it that I realised that we did a lot of things that didn't make money. We did a lot of things that were soft beauty, and I realised I wanted to focus on treatments that made an absolute difference to skin that you could see, not a short-term, not a today difference just because you had a nice facial. So the very thing that attracted me to it was the very thing that limited our expansion. So it took us it took me a couple of years to hone down on the new model that we were going to roll out.
Okay. Did you, when you first saw it, was expansion on the plans? Did you, when did you decide that franchising was the way to go with this business?
No, I literally when I first saw it, I met the previous owner, and in that conversation, he said to me, I'd always wanted to franchise this business, but I couldn't work out how to get doctors to work together. And I remember making the comment to him, well, that's all I've done for 22 years. Why is that so hard? Because I didn't
Yeah.
understand that it was hard. And so it wasn't 22 years, I think it was 18 years by then. So I didn't really understand that, but nor did I really take that statement seriously. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to franchise this business. At that point, I was just buying a business to get a visa to be here. But after 6 months here, not working, I was climbing the walls. And so I started to come in the clinic 2 to 3 days a week initially. And at that time, the GFC suddenly set in as well. So faced with the global financial crisis, I thought, well, I better pay more attention to this business because I don't want it to lose me money.
Mm.
And so I sort of took over the day-to-day management of it and then got really hooked. And I think probably about halfway through the GFC, I'd already decided I was franchising. I'd started to prepare. So I actually entered the franchising mode already with everything in place because I took the period of the GFC to work out what we needed to do.
Mm. So what are some of the key things that you put in place then to get ready for the step towards franchising?
So every single treatment and product that we delivered or sold was looked at in minutiae detail. So I assessed every consumable cost, every overhead cost. Not only what did it cost to deliver, but where did our marketing expenditure lie? Because of course, the more services you offer and the more things you have to market, the more your marketing budget's diluted. So I worked out what were the core procedures that were popular, what were people coming in the most, the usual 80-20 split, 80% of your
Mm.
revenues from 20% of your items, and focused on getting those absolutely perfectly right. And when I say right, I mean in terms of how we manage them in the system, how we talk to customers about them, how we welcome the customers into the clinic, how we treat them in the treatment room, how we make our records and notes, how our insurance sits with what we do. Because surprisingly, you'll find um, in this business, lots of people do things that are outside of their insurance, and I didn't want to do that. How our training was, how we could be the best we could be, because at that time, no one was coming out of beauty school with the skills that we needed. People would come out of beauty school with soft beauty skills, so they would understand the skin, they'd probably be able to do facials. If you were lucky, they could do a very basic microdermabrasion, but they weren't really good at things like advanced peels and other strategies for things like managing acne. So we had to create training modules for each of those. We had to create protocols that meant we were safe. And to do that, I got a couple of doctors involved to have an overview from a medical perspective to make sure that was working well. And then really just plan the whole thing. So again, how we looked, how we felt, what the uniforms were like, all of that was changed. And so it was really fun. It was a really interesting
Mm.
time, but it was a lot of work. It was very concentrated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot to go into all of that and that it's all based on a system for the whole business. So I think that's really good advice there in terms of whether you're intending to franchise or not, to have the business set up for all of those things.
Yeah, and look, the strength in franchising is that as a franchisee, you don't have to reinvent the wheel again. So, for example, if you became a McDonald's franchisee, everything in every McDonald's in any one country is the same. I know there's variation between countries, but if you go into a McDonald's in Sydney or in Brisbane, you'll get the same food delivered the same way in surroundings that look the same by staff who say the same thing. And that's the strength of franchising. Once you've got a system that works, maintaining that system is easier. But there's an awful lot of preparation goes into that. And then that's even before you start on things like the legal documentation and so on for franchising, which in Australia is the toughest in the world already and getting tougher still.
Hmm. All right. Now, at So you've moved on from Australian skincare business and you decided that it was time to start something new again. So what is it you're doing today and why do you do that?
So I've taken a bit of time out to more slowly go through where I want to be. I think everything I've ever done in the past, I've seen an opportunity and leapt at it, and then made that conscious decision to move. But in fact, my exit from ASC came sooner than I'd probably anticipated it to be, and then I was thrown into a position of, oh, what do I do now? So I've actually, for the first time ever, enjoyed a little bit of downtime. I've kept the original Australian Skin Clinic and I've rebranded that. So I've set that all up again. And its new name is Ultimate Skin and Body Clinic. And I kept that one really because I do like the industry and I do like the treatments that we do. And I will always need to have my treatments. So I exited ASC in February. And so since then, we've been rebranding this original, like I said, the original clinic. I've got quite a lot of IT experience one way or another in my background. So I also sit on a board of a company called BitQ, which is in Brisbane. And BitQ looks at data analysis. So it extrapolates data from various systems within any organization and brings them together in a meaningful way so that the business owners can make decisions based on that data. And I love that. That stuff fascinates me, always has. So when I had the opportunity to sit on the advisory board for that, I took it. I've also been doing some coaching and mentoring to some local businesses in the area. I've just accepted a new board position and literally the first board meeting was today, but for a company called Timely, who do appointment systems in the salon and spa space. So they're actually based in New Zealand, but I've joined their board. And I've also been doing due diligence on a couple of companies that I'm possibly interested in buying. And I'm still working through that at the moment.
Okay. Well, you're keeping really busy for downtime.
Yeah, it's actually, strangely, I feel like this has been at a cruisy pace. I don't feel like I'm overworked at the moment. So that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned that you do a fair bit of mentoring as well, and one of the things I saw you talk about in one of your blog posts, I think, was reverse mentoring, and I was fascinated by that. So tell us what you mean by that.
Oh, it's really simple. I don't think anybody's too old to learn. And for all that I've done and all the businesses that I've had and developed and grown, I don't believe I know it all. So I always take the opportunity to find out everything I can. My sort of, I suppose, go-to phrase for life is find out everything about everything you can because you don't know when you need it. And I think that set me in good stead. I started saying that I was about 16. So when I'm mentoring someone, a lot of me is about listening to their problems and listening to their aspirations and listening to their ideas for their business before giving them advice. And I find I learn a lot through that. Yeah. And at the minute,
Mm.
I'm mentoring a couple of techie people, and even though I consider myself quite computer literate, I've learned a lot from them as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating. As somebody was asking me about podcasts today and said the biggest hurdle for me is the tech stuff. And I said, well, the tech stuff's actually the smallest part of it. But we did have a little bit of an issue at the start, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. But I
Yeah.
have to say, I was talking to someone this morning who is, again, a tech leader, and he said to me, and we had a bit of trouble with the IT before we got going, and I was a bit embarrassed about it, really, because he's an IT person, and I felt I'd let him down, and he said, oh, don't worry, he said 50% of the time the IT is not right. So I felt better after that.
Yeah. All right. Now, one of the things I'm sure that you've got an opinion on, I'd like to kind of explore that a little bit more, is how to build an organizational culture when you're first starting out or when you first take something on. So you've had lots of businesses that you've either started or taken over and grown significantly. So I'm sure organizational culture was a big thing for that. So
Always.
yeah. How's that important? How does that play a role in kind of the success of the business, and what are your steps to go about kind of either strengthening what's there if it's a good organizational culture, or kind of taking it apart and rebuilding it in a way that is a really good organizational culture?
So I think the first one is startup. When you make a startup business, in a way, I think that's the easiest time to get the culture right, because you take on people who you feel will be aligned to your cause, and they've got no history because it's a startup. There's no "we do it that way" kind of mentality with them. And I think when you're doing something new and exciting, everybody gets behind it and drives it because it feels great, because it's something new and it's different. So I actually think I love startup the most, because then you build your culture to suit you. So, for example, with Australian skin clinics, once we made the uniforms blue, the girls started to call themselves Smurfs. And
Mm.
so we had our communications portal became Smurf Village, and we had pictures done of all the girls and men as well. But obviously, in aesthetics, there's more girls than women, more girls than men. So we did sort of caricatures of all the girls, with, for example, their personality. So we had our lawyer, and we called her the smiling assassin, Smurf, and I became a lady Smurf. And we had this. It was fun. A bit, it didn't preoccupy the whole day or any time, but we had this wall of Smurf faces, and everybody felt proud to be a Smurf, and that was a great culture to grow through. I think the hardest to come by is when you walk into a pre-existing business that's already got a culture of its own. And when you've possibly got people in that scenario who've been there, maybe 10 or more years, who know what they're doing, they've always done it this way, and they're pretty ingrained in their work patterns and work behavior, and they've got a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, perhaps don't want to change. Those are the harder situations to deal with. And it's pretty natural that when you do take over a business, you always generally get some fallout. People who were already thinking of leaving but kind of didn't have the great impetus to do so take that opportunity to go. And it's how you bring in the new people at that point, which is the most difficult. So I tend to, if I'm in that scenario, I tend to involve the existing staff with the changes as far as I possibly can, consult with them about the way things go, even let them sit on interviews for new staff as well.
Mm.
That is always the hardest. And I think there's probably not a manager out there who won't tell you that you do lose people when you're put into that position. And generally, if you've taken over a business, going concern, the owner's exiting possibly for a reason. It may be that they've taken it as far as they can, or that they can no longer see how to get the staff to take it to the next step. And so
Yeah.
perhaps maybe some of those people do need to go. It's a bit tread gently. And
Mm.
the other hard part is the middle bit. So when you start from grassroots, you have this amazing team who'll work day and night for you to do everything that needs to be done. And when we grew Australian Skin Clinics, we did that on initial team of 3 that became 7 in the end, and then grew suddenly. So we went from 7 staff to about 22 pretty quickly. And that was a rocky road, because in doing that, you tend to bring in mid-level managers who've got their own ideas about how departments can be run. They may not like the existing team in that department, and they may want to bring their own people in. So it's a whole people navigation at that point. And I think people underestimate the amount of work that's involved in that, in keeping everybody on the right track, on the right road, going in the right direction, and not allowing the sort of outside and the inside conflict, the new people and the old people.
Mm. So it sounds like your role then as the franchise owner or the person driving the growth of the franchise is really managing the people.
It is, and it's very much about setting the standards. It's about setting the standards of communication and the tone. So, if you're disrespectful, then they're going to become
Mm.
disrespectful. It's about keeping everybody on the right track, sharing the vision, sharing the dream, because, those people that started out in any business as the new, the growing group, they always see the vision much more clearly than anyone who comes in later. And so it's about keeping everybody who joins the business with the eye on the goal at the other end of the road, where it is we're going, and the fact that we are still going that way.
Yeah. Now, we talked earlier about systems and having your processes really well documented in preparation for franchising a business. How deeply ingrained is systemizing the business with the culture of the business and getting people to actually buy into the systems and doing things the way it's documented in the system, or taking the initiative to improve what's there if the documented process can be improved?
Um, I think in documenting a business, you've got to document not only everything that goes right, but everything that goes wrong as well. And
Mm.
it's very difficult to plan for disasters. So, one of the way in which I like to engage the staff is rather than say, these are the rules, this is what you need to do, is to say, okay, if I'm not here and you're not here, how will everyone know what to do? Oh, yes, we need to write it down. So it's
Mm.
just about the way I suppose, the way you sell the story. Um, it's quite interesting when people. I come across a lot of people who don't want to write down what they do because they're afraid that in writing it down, they're in some way going to do themselves out of a job because it's documented the knowledge. So the way I try and sell that, and it's right, you can't be promoted or you can't do another job or step into another role until there's a means of giving this role to someone else. And that
Mm.
means is partially by training, i.e., you hand it to them over a period of time, but also partially about having written down what they need to do if you're not there to tell them what to do.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm imagining, I mean, in a business like ours, we kind of say that in documenting that often that's something that can be turned into a product that somebody else can use. But in the franchise example, it's okay, you're not going to be able to do this task or this work across 10 franchises as the business grows. So we need maybe 10 or 9 other people like you in different locations doing the same thing.
That's exactly right. And I think in franchising there's sort of two sides. One is very what I call operational and functional. So, you know, whether it's a retail franchise or whether it's a home services franchise or food franchise, it's very much about customer service. It's very much about how you develop your teams, how you grow your teams, what you need your teams to know and understand and to actually physically say to a client or a customer. It's exactly the same in the head office as well. So you just have a similar rule book, I guess is the way to put it, for head office. But instead of the clients being the hungry people that come in to eat at McDonald's, for example, your
Mm.
clients are your franchisees.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what I always, from my office, they were always told, without franchisees, you would not have a job. So you have to be completely on the side of the franchisees, completely respectful to the franchisees, and you have to help them in every way you possibly can. Because if they're not making money, I'm not making enough money to pay you guys.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I love that because I've had some experiences with franchises that the they've got the franchised businesses have this philosophy of, we're here to serve the customer and we do everything to make sure that we really add value to the customer. But then the head office of the franchise didn't see their franchisees as customers and they didn't act in that manner. So, I mean, to me,
And that's exactly.
there's a disconnect in two ways because not only are they not helping the franchisees be successful, they're also modeling the entirely wrong behavior.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know what? If you think about it, one of the reasons people become a franchisee is so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. That there's a
Mm.
system, a procedure, and a support network that's going to help them grow their business. So that's what they're buying into. That's what they're paying for. So if having done that, paid their fees and got their franchise and start running their business, if the head office isn't supporting them, isn't teaching them what they don't know, isn't helping develop. And I see the franchisor's role as support, coach, and mentor. And if they're not doing all of those things, then the whole system's flawed.
Mm. Mm. So that of course then positioned you really well to take on those mentoring and coaching roles that you do now.
Yeah, so I actually don't go out there particularly to look for them. So I've got a small group of local businesses who at various times have had contact with me. And so I've done a combination of formal sessions and informal sessions. Sometimes I meet them as a group, sometimes I meet them on a one-to-one. So that's very exciting. I've also got a lot of background with staff theft, sadly. I think in my career, I've sacked definitely more than 70 people for theft, and it's probably more than 80 now. And so again, that's a particular area of expertise that I have. So if someone's not making money in a business, the first thing I look at is where they're losing money, be it by, actual conscious theft or slack systems or, misuse of products or services or even misappropriation of funds. So I kind of like doing that side of the work as well. I find that really interesting.
Oh, okay. So that's a bit of forensic accounting or forensic systems analysis, if you like.
Yeah, and particularly I like to teach that too. So, I'm
Mm.
far more interested in giving someone the skills to go and look at these things themselves rather than sit and audit their books for them or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd much rather teach it, but, I think I've actually done I've actually got a little free ebook that I give to people, and it's 36 ways your staff will steal from you.
All right. Okay. Well, maybe is that on your website?
It should be. If it's not, I can give it
Yeah.
to you.
Okay. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes in case people are interested. I guess one of the things that I think that could be really useful for is setting up systems or making sure your systems are set up in a way that there's no risk of,
Little,
say, somebody being opportunistic about something like that. And then if you do, as you suggested earlier, making sure you're doing a really good job of hiring the right people, then you've probably done the right things to cover off that risk.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually, I definitely see it as there's several steps in that process. So number one is having systems that deter theft and discourage it. So if people are going to steal, they're going to steal, but you can make it as hard for them as you can.
Mm.
The second thing is to be kind of alert to your staff and your team members, because I think intrinsically most of the world is generally, or most of the employees are generally honest, sort of. But people steal when they feel that you've got something they haven't got. So they steal from their bosses. They find a way to justify it. I did overtime and didn't get paid for it. I don't get enough holidays. I work very hard. I don't get recognized for it. So there tends to have to be a justification. That's how I put it. A justification on their part for why they steal, and then also usually you've got to have a need for money. And I've seen it all. A wedding. I've seen, a daughter go back to live with her mother with two kids, and the mother had to, look after all three of them. I've seen weddings come up several times. Actually, they need money to get married. Sickness in the family, healthcare reasons, addictions, and alcohol addictions, and gambling addictions. So, if you're aware of what's going on in the lives of your staff, you can see points to which you think, hang on a minute, is that going to become a problem? So, for example, if you know someone's just lost their house because they have a gambling problem, they didn't pay their mortgage, then you know they're going to need money, and you can be sure they're going to find a way to take it from you. So that's what I teach: how to get the system in place, how to keep tabs, not tabs, that's the wrong word, but how to keep a tune with your staff so you can see those flags when they come, and how to recognize when staff are becoming disgruntled for any reason within the business. And of those three things, you can't change what happens in their personal lives, so you can't change their need for money at all. And to a great extent, you can't even change whether they disgruntled with you, because often people get disgruntled and you don't even know that. So that's another
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But the only thing of the three that you can change is the opportunity you give them to steal from you. And that's where the systems come into place, and the understanding of different ways of taking money, profits, products, whatever, out of a business.
Mm. Mm. All right. Well, that's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure that's something that could fill a podcast episode on its own. But I would like to come back to sort of the growing business part of it, and ask you, in terms of all the businesses you've started and you've left, have you picked your time to leave, and is there a right time to leave a business? I mean, obviously, if you get a nice offer of a sale.
a nice sum
That's
of money. Yeah.
probably one good one, yeah. But is there a
Um,
time to leave a
I
business
think,
when you've
yeah,
taken it as far as you can? So you've taken over businesses where people have made that decision?
I think for everybody there's a different answer, and so, and I think even for myself, the answers varied according to the time of my life. In principle, um, I think as a founder, I like growth. I like the startup, the develop. I like the challenge of new. And that doesn't have to be new from right from the very beginning. It could be new as in taking over a business and it's new to me, and then I'm starting again with a new challenge. But for me, it's that sort of, I suppose the best years for me are the first 6, 7, because that's when you can make the biggest impact in what you do. That's when you're fresh at it. Um, And then I think in terms of the exit side, again, I thought it was a good idea to exit my businesses in the UK. I thought I would spend more time with my kids. That's definitely what I wanted to do. And
Mm.
I thought I'd earned the right really to have an early retirement. What I hadn't catered for was how quickly I'd become bored and missed what I did. And so I suppose the $1 million question is, would I have left otherwise? And I think the answer is still yes. I think I would have left because I was bored. I'd been doing that a long time. Everything was under control. We had a manager for everything we did, and I was almost surplus to requirements. And so I
Yeah.
think I would have left anyway.
Mm.
I just thought I was leaving to retire, and then that wasn't right.
Yeah. So you decided to start up something else, and it sounds like
Someone,
you've got
sorry.
some more startups there lined up that
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
considering.
it's an interesting thing is a CEO recently said to me, he was interested to know when was the best time for a business to hand over to a CEO, for an entrepreneur rather, to hand over to a
Mm.
CEO. And I've worked corporate before I was before I was out on my own. So I took a deep breath when he said that, and pondered over that for quite a period of time. And I think, some entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs with ideas and entrepreneurs at the role of the job. So, for example, tech entrepreneurs generally are good coders. That's how they get the insight.
Mm.
Um, but I was always an entrepreneur as a business manager, even before I was an entrepreneur on my own. So I've in my own case, I don't think there was ever a time to hand over to a CEO. I don't think I ever needed to particularly hand over to a CEO. Um, but again, maybe that could have been an exit strategy to hand over to a CEO and then go and do something else again.
Mm. Yeah. But of course, there's various paths there, isn't there? I mean, one of the classic examples recently was the founders of Google who got a CEO in from external, and now that CEO, his name escapes me now, but I think he's on the board, and the founders are back in the two senior management roles again. So I guess he was brought on as a mentor for them to teach them more about the management side of things, and then he's moved on.
Yeah, yeah, and indeed, there's a you have to have a career path as an entrepreneur. You can't, if you don't have a career path as an entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur, if that makes any sense, because you've still got to keep on learning, looking for the opportunities. And it's only by progressing yourself, developing yourself, learning more yourself, that you then see those opportunities. I
Mm.
mean, I can go to, literally, I have been known to go to a seminar in the morning, speak to 3 people, and come up with a whole business plan by lunchtime for a new business. I don't always do it. Often I give those to friends to do if it's something that doesn't interest me. But
Yeah.
it's that interaction, that stimulation of talking to other people that drives the ideas and keeps things moving forward.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's great advice. Well, on the note of continuous learning and career paths, I think that's a really good segue into the Buzz, which is our innovation round designed to help our audience, who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field, with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully you'll give us a really short, snappy answer that'll inspire people to go and do something awesome today. So
Okay.
What's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Stop looking back. So you don't, things that we've done before are useful to help inform the things we do in the future. But just because we did things one way previously doesn't mean to say that's the way it's to be done in the future.
That's great advice. So learn from the past, but be open to doing things differently.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas or even new businesses?
Generally talk to people, as I said earlier. So I'm a thirst of, I'm hungry for knowledge all the time. So whenever I go anywhere, meet people, um, I generally want to hear about them, what they do, what their expertise is, what their skill set is, what their belief set is, and what they're doing in business. And I think that's a great way to make both linkages in terms of contacts for, sometimes you meet people once or twice, and then 4 years later, you suddenly realize that's the person you need to speak to again. So that's good. But also that there's nothing better than bouncing ideas around a room with like-minded people who are interested and in the same position where they're looking to grow.
Yeah, great advice. I think one of the things around entrepreneurship is it can be very lonely, and to connect with other people, as you say, can give you lots of great ideas and lots of new knowledge. All right, what's one of the resources you use most often?
An A4 hardback book and a pen.
Yeah.
I have a journal which I carry around with me everywhere I go. I make notes of everything I do and all the meetings, and then I scribble ideas all over it. I've kept every journal since I was about 22. I have them all, and as great as all the software and apps and different things are, when you change your phone, when you change your app, you lose your stuff. And I just like to
Yeah.
put it on paper. I'm old
Mm.
school.
So how often do you go back and look through the journals that you've kept?
Very often, but not in a sort of casual reading mode. So I'll think, oh, yes, I met that girl or that woman or that man at this place last year. Yes, it was in Vegas and it was in June. And I'll go and find that June journal and
Okay. Yeah.
may pick up. I'll either have their phone number there or their business card there, or I may just have scribbled notes that I took
Mm.
there. But yeah, usually very focused. I have a pretty good memory for places, events, and what we spoke about. I'm less good with names. The journal helps me remember the names.
Yeah. Okay. Great. What's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
My A4 notebook with my pen.
Same thing. Yeah.
So I tend to, every Friday night, when the last thing I do before I go to bed, I go through the week's journal. I highlight the things that are outstanding. I tick the things that are done, and I make notes for the next week, or not a note, but I have an ongoing job list, probably every few months, or no, not that long, probably every 2 months. I copy it forward into the book where it's outstanding, just to make it neat again, and I keep things rolling over that way.
Mm.
I also put things in the Outlook calendar if I have to, obviously if I have to ring someone or follow someone up, then I tend to put things in the calendar as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty good system with your
I think,
notebooks, particularly the review system and carrying actions forward.
yeah, I think it's very efficient, and people will say it's archaic, and my kids laugh at me for it. And my son keeps telling me, put it on your notes app, and I did try that for a while, but then lost my phone, and well, didn't lose it, but got an update and lost my notes in there. So I like pen and paper. I also like handwriting too, so I get to do that
Mhm.
then as well.
Yeah, I've recently started journaling. I do a lot on the computer, but I've recently started journaling kind of just random daily thoughts. And I find that sitting down at a desk and writing with a fountain pen, I've got a nice fountain pen, and writing in a book is actually really nice. I
It's
quite enjoy it.
satisfying, yeah.
Mm.
And actually, the evidence is the things that we handwrite we remember better than the things we type. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's a good reason for doing that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of truth in that. All right, what's the number one thing you think anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I think differentiate is actually about attitude and approach to things. So if you want to be the same as everyone else, you're never going to be able to differentiate yourself. So I think the way I differentiate myself is I genuinely don't care what people think of what I do. So, give you an example. When I was first decided I was going to grow the ASC franchise, and I was going to franchise, I told everybody I knew I was going to franchise, and 9 out of 10 people said it couldn't be done. People wouldn't want Botox and fillers in a shopping centre, and it was very frivolous, and it wasn't going to make any money, and so on and so forth. And I just kept doing what I wanted to do, and then in the end, you then become known as a leader in something new. So I think that point of differentiation is just about not listening to others, sticking to your own cause, and not trying to be another copy of someone, but trying to be uniquely different and looking for that edge, looking for what's different.
Yeah, that's a great story, a great analogy, and I think there's a bit of a dichotomy there, isn't there? On the one hand, you're talking to people, you're getting new ideas from people, you're validating ideas with people because, as you said earlier, if you've got a product or a service or a business that you want to franchise and you think it's a great idea, you've got to have other people that think it's a great idea and worth spending money on. But at the same time, if you've got a lot of people giving you gratuitous advice or saying you should be doing it the same as somebody else, then that's where that self-confidence to know that you're on the right path and you're going to do it your way is really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, and it's quite interesting as well because when I was telling everyone in that phase I was going to franchise, a couple of people said to me, the staff here actually in the building said, "Well, why are you telling people this? They might get ahead of you." And I said, "Well, if they start to get ahead of me, then it was the right idea. I'm onto something because they're doing it as
Yeah.
well." But the interesting thing is, I must have told tens of people what I was going to do. Nobody copied me then. They only copied me once it was up and running and was successful.
Yeah, they
So
wait until you've made all the mistakes so they can avoid those.
perhaps they just saw they were wrong that it was going to
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
So I don't know which way around it is, but they
Mm.
say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, so it didn't worry me then
Mm.
either.
Yeah, that's right. I always like when people copy me because,
Well,
as you say,
it
it's
does. It's
flattery.
it's a
Yeah.
sign you did something right. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Well, thanks,
And
Deb.
while they're
This has
copying
been
you, you're moving on. Yeah. Sorry.
That's right. Yeah. Somebody once said to me on innovation, give away all your best stuff because that way you're forced to invent new stuff. And it's exactly what you said. Whilst they're copying you, you're moving on and doing the next big thing, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, Deb. This has been really great and really fantastic. Where can people reach out, find out more about you, get a hold of your book about how people might steal from you so they can close those gaps, and also perhaps even say thank you for what you've shared today?
So I have a website. It's debfarnworth-wood.com, all one word. And I think the download's on there. And if it's not, I'll check. And if it's not, you can email me through the site and I'll send it.
Okay, great. So we'll have links to that on the show notes. So finally, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in their field and leader in innovation, perhaps?
I think the number one piece of advice is just be bold and go for it. If you've got the knowledge and you've got the skills to do that, then we all always suffer an element of self-doubt, and even I at times have suffered from self-doubt. But if you're in a belief system, so this is something you really want to do and it's really going to work, then you have to have a shot, because if you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life thinking you should have.
That's right. Yeah, and there's nothing worse than kind of looking back, as you said earlier. Stop looking back, but looking back and regretting something you didn't do, rather than perhaps you had a shot at it, it didn't work out, but there's a lesson to be learnt there, so you can move forward with that lesson.
Yeah, and the most boring people at the parties are the ones who stand there and tell you, I could have done this or I could have done that, and
Yeah.
somebody else took it off me or they did it before me. They're the most boring people. The interesting people are the ones who got on and done it and got something positive to say.
Yeah. Or there's a a great, I can't remember the details of the story, but it's something along the lines of there's some new invention or some new product just been launched and, a month ago, and then the conversation goes something like, well, I thought of that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't do anything about it, right?
Thinking's only the first bit.
That's right, yeah. All right, well, before we leave, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why?
Well, I think David Smolder, who's the managing director of BitQ, which is the company I mentioned in Brisbane.
Yeah.
The reason is he's got a really incredibly interesting background, being an entrepreneur himself, then moving into a corporate environment and then going back into entrepreneurship. And his story is quite fascinating. I think you'll enjoy that.
All right. Well, we might get an introduction to David from you and connect with him and get him on the podcast. So thanks for that.
More than welcome.
Thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today on the InnovaBuzz podcast. I've really enjoyed this immensely. I've learnt quite a bit. I've got some notes here that we'll use for the show notes to share with people. And I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks so much. Yes, hopefully we'll speak again. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed that engaging and very informative conversation with Deb and, like me, took away something valuable from what she shared. What I particularly liked were her approaches to learning and innovation and engaging the right people to your organisation. I'd love to know what you took away from Deb's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Deb Farnworth-Wood. That is DEB FARNWORTHWOOD. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Deb Farnworth-Wood. You'll also find contact information there for getting in touch with Deb, as well as links to her website, her ebook about employee theft, as well as the other resources that we spoke about in today's interview. Deb suggested we interview David Smulders of BitQ on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So, David, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Deb Farnworth-Wood. Finally, I'd like to give a shout out to Paolo Buchet from Italy for his review of the InnovaBuzz podcast. He says the InnovaBuzz podcast is a fantastic entry point into real-life innovation. Lots of great people, great insights, lively and fun. Keep going. Thanks, Paolo. Thanks for that wonderful review and also for the encouragement. So we hope that we will keep going and providing those great insights and lively, fun, entertaining guests for you to continue to listen to. Remember to head over to innovabiz.co/VIP to access the Transformational Marketing Hub and all its free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. Also, check out our Tales of Marketing Transformation show at talesofmarketingtransformation.com, where on each episode we'll provide one valuable message to guide you on your marketing journey. And, of course, tune in again next week where we've got more fantastic guests lined up, including Peter Cook of the Thought Leaders Business School and Rob Brayman of Cogent Analytics. Stay connected. Subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you'll make sure you'll never miss another episode. Head on over to innovabiz.co/subscribe. We'd also love you to leave us a review, because what you think matters to us. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, then share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic Facebook community at the Tales of Marketing Transformation Facebook group. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co innovabusiness.com/TMA. It's free to join. I hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.